How to win without fighting. This is the supreme excellence that masters of strategy have practiced for millennia, while the masses remain trapped in crude fantasies of direct confrontation and brute force. The art they never taught you is not the absence of warfare, but warfare so sophisticated that victory is achieved before your opponents realize a battle was ever taking place. I have witnessed countless individuals destroy themselves through unnecessary conflicts they could have won without lifting a finger, squander their resources in battles that strategic positioning could have made irrelevant, and exhaust their strength, fighting symptoms while the true sources of their challenges remained untouched and unopposed. Sun Tzu understood this principle when he wrote, "Supreme excellence consists of breaking the enemy's resistance without fighting, but this wisdom extends far beyond military strategy. It represents the highest form of human intelligence applied to every domain where competing interests, limited resources, and conflicting objectives create the conditions that most people mistake for inevitable confrontation. The art of winning without fighting operates through principles that the educational system, professional training, and cultural conditioning systematically ignore because they threaten existing power structures that depend on keeping people trapped in reactive, confrontational patterns that serve others' interests while exhausting their own resources. Today I speak of the sophisticated strategies that enable victory through positioning rather than power, influence rather than force, and intelligence rather than aggression. These are the methods that separate true masters from mere participants in the endless struggles that consume most people's lives, while producing nothing of lasting value. True victory begins long before any conflict becomes visible, through the careful positioning of resources, relationships, and reputation in configurations that make your eventual success inevitable, while making opposition increasingly costly and ultimately futile for your competitors. This positioning operates below conscious awareness, creating advantages so fundamental that direct confrontation becomes unnecessary. Strategic positioning involves identifying the key factors that determine outcomes in any domain and systematically securing advantageous positions relative to those factors, while others remain focused on immediate tactics and reactive responses. Like controlling high ground in military strategy, you establish positions that provide natural advantages requiring minimal energy to maintain, while forcing potential opponents to expend enormous effort attempting to dislodge you. This principle operates through what might be called structural power, influence that emerges from your position within networks, systems, and relationships, rather than from direct application of force, or obvious displays of strength. When you control essential resources, key relationships, or critical information flows, others must accommodate your interests to pursue their own objectives, creating voluntary cooperation that appears to be their choice, rather than your strategy. The positioning extends to temporal advantages, establishing yourself early in developing markets, emerging trends, or evolving relationships before competition intensifies and positions become contested. The first occupant of valuable territory often enjoys permanent advantages that later arrivals cannot overcome, regardless of their resources or capabilities. Reputation positioning involves systematically building credibility, trust, and perceived competence in areas that matter for your long-term objectives. This reputation becomes self-reinforcing as others seek association with recognized expertise, creating opportunities and alliances that would be impossible to achieve through direct solicitation or competitive bidding. Perhaps most sophisticated is what might be called option positioning, securing rights, relationships, or capabilities that provide future choices without immediate commitment. Like purchasing options in financial markets, you invest small amounts in potential opportunities that can be exercised when conditions become favorable, providing asymmetric advantage where your costs are limited, but your potential gains are substantial. The mastery lies in recognizing that positioning battles are often won through patience, persistence, and strategic investment rather than dramatic action. Small, consistent moves compound over time to create overwhelming advantages, while others remain focused on immediate outcomes that dissipate quickly without solid foundational positioning. The most powerful victories are achieved by shaping others' perceptions, desires, and decision-making processes so that they voluntarily choose actions that serve your interests while believing they are pursuing their own objectives. This psychological influence operates through understanding human nature, motivation patterns, and the unconscious factors that drive behavior. Influence begins with deep understanding of what others truly want versus what they claim to want, what they fear versus what they admit fearing, and what they need versus what they recognize needing. This intelligence gathering occurs through careful observation, strategic questions, and patient listening that reveals psychological drivers that can be leveraged without direct manipulation or obvious coercion. The principle of aligned interests involves structuring situations so that others achieve their objectives by helping you achieve yours. Instead of opposing their goals, you create pathways where their success depends on or contributes to your success. This transforms potential opponents into unwitting allies who advance your agenda through their pursuit of their own interests. Social proof and authority dynamics can be leveraged to create influence without direct confrontation by establishing yourself as the obvious expert, the natural leader, or the logical choice in specific domains. When others perceive you as the authority, they voluntarily defer to your judgment and recommendations, creating compliance that feels like respect rather than submission. The psychology of scarcity and exclusivity generates desire and urgency without requiring aggressive sales tactics or competitive pressure. By controlling access to valuable resources, opportunities, or relationships, you create situations where others compete for your attention rather than requiring you to compete for theirs. Reciprocity principles enable influence through strategic generosity and value provision that creates psychological obligation without explicit quid pro quo arrangements. When you consistently provide value without immediate expectation of return, others naturally seek opportunities to reciprocate, creating willing cooperation that emerges from their initiative rather than your demands. Perhaps most sophisticated is what might be called environmental design, creating physical, social, and informational environments that naturally encourage the decisions and behaviors you prefer. Instead of trying to change people's minds through argument, you design their choice architecture so that your preferred options appear obvious and attractive while alternatives seem difficult or unappealing. Sometimes the most powerful move is not engagement, but strategic withdrawal that forces opponents to overextend themselves, reveals their true intentions, or creates opportunities for indirect approach, while they remain focused on the position you have abandoned. This withdrawal is not retreat, but tactical repositioning that serves larger strategic objectives. Strategic withdrawal operates through the principle that forcing others to attack empty positions wastes their resources while preserving yours. Like a matador, using the cape to direct the bull's charge away from his body, you create targets that draw opponents' attention and energy, while keeping your essential assets protected and mobile. The art involves distinguishing between positions worth defending and positions that can be surrendered without strategic loss. Many conflicts persist because people defend symbolic territory or ego investments that have no practical value, exhausting themselves in unnecessary battles, while neglecting positions that actually matter for long-term objectives. Misdirection works by creating obvious targets or apparent vulnerabilities that draw opponents' attention away from your actual plans and preparations. While they focus on preventing what they believe you intend to do, you execute different strategies that they never anticipated or prepared to counter. The principle extends to information warfare, where strategic revelation and concealment shape others' understanding of the situation in ways that serve your objectives. By controlling what others know, when they learn it, and how they interpret it, you influence their strategic decisions without directly constraining their options. Temporal misdirection involves creating false impressions about your timeline, urgency, or patience level that cause opponents to make premature moves or wait too long to act effectively. When they believe you are rushed, they may offer concessions to accelerate decisions. When they believe you have unlimited time, they may postpone preparations that would strengthen their position. The mastery of strategic withdrawal includes knowing when to allow others to believe they have won battles that don't affect your ability to win the war. These apparent victories can actually serve your interests by making opponents overconfident, reducing their vigilance, or satisfying their need for validation, while you continue working toward objectives they don't understand or recognize. The highest form of winning without fighting involves understanding and leveraging the systems, networks, and structures that determine outcomes in any domain, allowing you to achieve massive results through minimal direct effort by working with rather than against the forces that shape your environment. Systemic leverage begins with recognizing that most outcomes emerge from underlying patterns, incentive structures, and network effects, rather than individual actions or direct interventions. When you understand these systems, you can make small changes that create cascade effects, achieving disproportionate results through strategic influence on key leverage points. This principle operates through what systems theorists call Archimedes' leverage, finding the fulcrum points where small forces can move large masses. In social systems, this might involve influencing key connectors, opinion leaders, or decision-makers whose positions amplify your influence throughout broader networks, without requiring you to convince everyone individually. Financial leverage allows you to achieve objectives that would be impossible with your own resources alone, by accessing and directing others' capital toward outcomes that serve your interests. This might involve partnerships, joint ventures, or investment structures, where others provide the resources, while you provide the expertise, relationships, or opportunities. Regulatory and legal leverage involves understanding and utilizing existing rules, procedures, and institutional processes to achieve your objectives through official channels, rather than attempting to circumvent or oppose established systems. When you know how systems work, you can often accomplish through proper procedures what others cannot achieve through force or influence. Network effects enable you to create value and influence that grows exponentially as more people participate in systems you design or control. Like telephone networks that become more valuable as more people join them, you can create platforms, communities, or standards that others adopt, because adoption serves their interests while strengthening your position. Technological leverage allows you to accomplish through automation, algorithms, or digital systems what would require enormous human effort if performed manually. By understanding and utilizing technology effectively, you can compete with much larger organizations, or accomplish objectives that would be impossible through traditional methods. Perhaps most powerful is what might be called cultural leverage, aligning your objectives with broader cultural trends, social movements, or generational changes that provide massive momentum behind your initiatives. Instead of fighting against cultural currents, you position yourself to benefit from changes that are happening regardless of your individual efforts. The supreme achievement in winning without fighting is reaching a position where opposition becomes not just difficult but irrelevant, where your success no longer depends on defeating others, but emerges from value creation, innovation, or positioning that transcends the competitive dynamics others remain trapped within. This transcendence operates through what economists call blue ocean strategy, creating new value categories or markets where traditional competition doesn't apply, because you are operating in dimensions that others haven't recognized or developed capabilities to address. Instead of fighting for market share in existing categories, you create new categories where you face no direct competition. The principle extends to personal and professional contexts, where you develop unique combinations of skills, relationships, and expertise that make you irreplaceable rather than merely competitive. When your value proposition cannot be replicated by others, competition becomes irrelevant, because there are no substitutes for what you provide. Innovation leverage allows you to obsolete competitive threats by advancing beyond what others are trying to protect or achieve. While they fight to maintain positions in declining or stable markets, you create new solutions that make their positions irrelevant, rather than merely challenging their dominance in existing categories. The ultimate expression involves shifting from competitive to creative orientation, focusing on generating new value rather than capturing existing value from others. This abundance mindset enables collaborations and partnerships that would be impossible from competitive orientations, accessing resources and capabilities that pure competition cannot provide. Institutional leverage involves creating or influencing the rules, standards, and criteria by which success is measured in your domain. When you participate in setting the standards, you can ensure that those standards favor your strengths while making others' advantages less relevant or valuable. Legacy positioning focuses on creating lasting value that continues generating benefits long after initial efforts end. This might involve building institutions, developing intellectual property, or creating systems that operate independently while serving your interests. The victory continues compounding without requiring ongoing competitive effort. The mastery ultimately involves recognizing that the most complete victories create value for everyone involved, including potential opponents who benefit more from cooperation than competition. When your success enhances rather than threatens others' opportunities, opposition disappears because supporting you serves their interests better than opposing you. The path I walked required learning that true power expresses itself, not through the ability to defeat others, but through the wisdom to make defeat unnecessary. Not through strength in conflict, but through intelligence that prevents conflict from serving anyone's interests, except your own. They discovered that every fight you can avoid is energy preserved for objectives that actually matter. Every confrontation you can circumvent is resources available for creative rather than defensive purposes, and every opposition you can transform into cooperation is an ally gained rather than an enemy temporarily suppressed. The art they never taught you operates on principles that formal education systematically ignores, because these principles threaten the competitive scarcity-based thinking that keeps people trapped in struggles that serve institutional interests rather than individual development. They want you fighting over predetermined prizes rather than creating new categories of value. Your modern world has amplified opportunities for winning without fighting through technological leverage, network effects, and global connectivity that enable small, smart actors to achieve results that once required enormous resources and direct confrontation. The same systems that create new forms of competition also create new possibilities for transcending competition entirely. The individuals who master these principles gain access to what might be called effortless power, influence that grows through strategic positioning, rather than constant effort, results that compound through systematic leverage, rather than linear work, and success that attracts opportunities, rather than requiring aggressive pursuit of each objective. Begin by shifting from competitive to strategic thinking, analyzing the systems, relationships, and leverage points that determine outcomes in your domain, rather than focusing on direct competition with others who may be operating in entirely different frameworks. Most conflicts dissolve when you understand the underlying structures that create them. Develop patience for positioning over immediate results, understanding that strategic advantages compound over time, while tactical victories often prove temporary and costly. The time invested in proper positioning returns exponential benefits that direct action cannot achieve, regardless of effort, intensity. Master the art of influence through value creation, rather than value extraction, building relationships and reputation that make others want to support your success, rather than requiring you to overcome their resistance. When your objectives align with others' interests, cooperation emerges naturally, without negotiation or manipulation. Most importantly, recognize that the highest victories are achieved not by defeating opponents, but by making their opposition irrelevant through innovation, positioning, or value creation that transcends the competitive dynamics they remain trapped within. The art of winning without fighting is ultimately the art of intelligent positioning, strategic patience, and systematic leverage that makes your success inevitable while making others' opposition either impossible or counterproductive to their own interests. This is not avoidance of conflict, but transcendence of the need for conflict through superior understanding of the forces that determine outcomes. In mastering this art, You join the ranks of those who shape reality rather than merely responding to it, who create the conditions of their success, rather than hoping to overcome the conditions of their circumstances, and who win through wisdom rather than warfare, because wisdom recognizes that the greatest victories require no battles at all. The fight you don't have to fight is the fight you've already won through preparation, positioning, and the kind of strategic intelligence that makes opposition serve your purposes rather than threatening your objectives. This is the ultimate expression of power, strength so complete that it never needs to be demonstrated because its effects are already shaping the world according to your will.